Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the Township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the Township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the Township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Good evening. I'm Darrell Seasals, Chairman of the East Lampeter Township Planning Commission. Also present this evening is Jerry Huskin, Randy Patterson, to my left, to my right, Jason Dagan, followed by Colin Seasals, Director of Planning, Dave Sinopoli, Zoning Officer, and Alicia Hare, Administrative Assistant. Not present tonight is Sarah Ryder. She couldn't make the meeting this evening, so welcome. Open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just like to thank you for coming this evening after we had to reschedule the meeting from last week. So I'm happy you were able to work it in your schedule and be present with it. So thank you. First item of business for us is approval of the minutes of the June 14th Planning Commission meeting.
Move their approval.
So having read them, I believe there's no, so we have a motion by Randy and a second by Jerry. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Opposed, none, abstaining, none. Also, I'd just like to know, I don't believe there's anybody on Zoom this evening. So everybody that's present is present here in the room. Old business, none. New business, first item is the Plan 2022-4 Lancaster Mennonite School preliminary final land development plan. Is anybody present? Okay. Welcome. If you could make sure the mic's turned on and use it. Yeah, the meeting is recorded, so we need to use the microphones.
Sure.
And if you could identify yourself and.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Kyle Stauffer with Thurk and Edson Associates. I'm the architect. With me is Dave Maderi in our office and Troy Hurst from the school. This project, just to give you a little background, is Lancaster Mennonite is consolidating some operations. They're closing or shifting some operations from Locust Grove, New Danville to this campus. Their enrollment has kind of declined since the 2006 peak. And because of that, even though they're consolidating some operations, we don't anticipate there's going to be any increase in traffic or parking or sewer and water capacity as a result of this project. This is sort of phase two of their summer projects. Phase one was creating a loop drive and some parking facilities. This one's also pretty simple. It's a small building addition to create a new entrance for the high school. And then we're kind of reconfiguring some asphalt to improve circulation and add some parking. As far as site improvements go, we're also adding a small 12-foot wide porous asphalt trail to the north of the site, and then stormwater is managed by a rain garden to meet current regulations. So that's really all that it is. It's pretty simple and straightforward. We've received all of our outside approvals, ESC, NPDS, fire department, et cetera, and we've addressed all staff and engineering review plan comments at this point, and the school is pretty anxious to be getting started on this one before the students come back in the fall. So I think that's really all I have for this. Do you have any questions or comments or concerns?
I didn't hear what you said the structure the high school is for.
Yes, sir. It's an entrance for the high school.
Oh, it's an entrance.
A small entrance, yeah, small building addition. No, it's just it's a small building addition.
That's what confused me.
Maybe I misspoke. It's a small addition there in that dark blue color down to the left.
Like a-
So the lighter blue is existing high school, and the darker blue is the extent of the addition there. And there's some small walkways that go along with it.
Okay. Well, we do have a review letter from Dave Miller and Associates and also from Lancaster County. You are requesting some waivers,
Yes.
and do you have the June 20th letter?
Not in front of me, no. I think I have some of the actions modifications requested in my notes here.
Well, the first item
David has it. There we go.
is maximum load ratios.
Yeah.
And requesting a modification to that for karst and non-karst areas. And recommendation from the township's engineer is that that request be granted based on the project geologist's recommendation and the documentation that was submitted. Next waiver request is preliminary plan. So you'd be submitting a preliminary final plan, meeting all the requirements of preliminary and final in this submission. And if that's done, that waiver is recommended also for being granted. The third item is plan scale. Certain plans, I believe your overall, one of our very quote unquote master plan is at a larger scale where most of your other plans, as I understand, are at 50 or 20 scale. Yeah. And based on that, the recommendation is that be granted by our engineer. We'll see what feeling is here. Fourth item is the name of owners of all immediate adjacent undeveloped land, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that you show within 200 feet of your property, numerous items. The one request here by our engineer is that the waiver request be denied and that a modification be granted with the condition that the applicant represent the areas within 200 feet of the subject tract with an aerial image. Is that, and that's acceptable? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Fifth item for waivers is all existing streets at the perimeter to be in accordance with township specifications. And a waiver has been requested for that requirement based on the Route 30 streetscape, of which you have frontage. There's a recommendation that a 12-foot wide sidewalk as recommended in that Route 30 streetscape be constructed and as a proposed walking path be placed within a pedestrian access easement. If that condition based on our engineer's recommendation is met, then the other concerns would be for the widening would be acceptable.
Yes, we are showing the 12-foot wide walkway within the easement, and yeah, I don't think we're approving Route 30 at this point in time.
thank you. Yeah. That's a discussion I'm glad you had. We didn't. So thank you. We have the June 20th letter. And oh, and then the other item was in reference to the PennDOT owned bridge, that would be a deferral for later once PennDOT works out their
Yes.
design for the bridge.
Correct. We can't really expand the walking trail until it's the bridge.
And the sixth item, applicants shall reserve easements for stormwater and surface water management facilities. And the request that was made is a modification requirement and proposing a blanket easement. And based on the justification, that recommendation is to grant that request. And SEDM is related, stormwater management. One's under SALDO, one's under stormwater ordinance. But it's a similar issue under two different requirements of land development ordinance and stormwater. I believe in my read that the last comment, stormwater management, makes reference to that same thing, and which indicates that not only is that recommended, but your understanding is that a plan and meets and bounds and a written agreement would have to be submitted to the township for the solicitor's approval. Would be a condition of that. Well, that's true. Okay. And the last item is, depending on the outcome of this evening's recommendation and the supervisors, all those would be noted on the plan. And then under subdivision land development, one comment, financial security. And there's some recommendations for updated items, and that would be reviewed with the supervisors for the financial security. And then the stormwater management, which I mentioned. So it sounds like you are in agreement with all the recommendations for the June 20th letter of Dave Miller. And then we also have a letter from Lancaster County. And they have a site design commentary in regards to bicycle parking should be provided on site. I'm sorry. Okay. Seeing that you have the mic, could you repeat that? so we
Sure,
get it?
yes, we have added bicycle.
I'm sorry.
accommodations on the- yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you have provided bicycle parking on site. And then the other is just a notation of the signature block for the county, which has changed from previous, yeah. So, and adding the LCP file number. Any comments or discussions from this side of the table? Okay. Any from the applicant or others in the room?
You're
In
planning to
reference-
finish this work when? Before the kids come.
no further comments or discussion, I'll look for a motion in regards to the Lancaster Mennonite School plan.
I'll make a motion that plan number 2022-4 Lancaster Mennonite High School for 2176 Lincoln Highway East for an entrance addition and parking improvements recommended for approval by the Board of Supervisors with the following waivers and modifications to be granted. So waiver to be granted of the maximum loading ratios as identified in David Miller Associates letter dated June 20th, 2022. Waiver of preliminary plan conditioned on fulfilling both preliminary and final with the final plan. Waiver of the scale of the final plan. A denial of the waiver for, make sure I get this right, for the identification of numerous items on the plan, but an approval of a modification that granted with the condition that you provide an aerial view showing those and identifying those. A waiver of the existing street improvements with the condition that you will provide, as you've identified, a 12-foot wide walkway in accordance with our streetscape plans, and that would be placed within a pedestrian easement, that a deferral be granted on the improvements to the 12-foot wide walkway in the area of the PennDOT Bridge, and a modification of a requirement for easements, both on stormwater and surface water management facilities, with a condition that you provide a blanket easement, that you would agree to the financial security items identified in David Miller Associates letter, as well as the stormwater management comments, that you have agreed to provide bicycle parking identified by the County Planning Commission, their letter dated March 8, 2022, as well as changing plan notes. That's it.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
We have the second. Any discussion? Not. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All in favor, no opposed, none abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay. Okay. You must have looked at the agenda. It's a good assumption that you're next. Good evening.
Claudia
Okay.
Shank from McNeese Wallace and Nurek, and I'm here this evening on behalf of High Properties. I'm joined by Toby Sykes from High, as well as David Miller from the Two Associates. We are here this evening to discuss the final subdivision and land development plan for Greenfield North. I think the board, or the planning commission rather, is familiar with this project. You may recall this plan was originally conditionally approved last September. And then we undertook a series of revisions to the plan based on market and economic changes, realities. Those changes resulted in the elimination of some of the underground parking. There was a slight increase in the overall number of units shown on the plan. And we appeared before the Planning Commission in May to go over in detail the changes from the previous version of the plan that you would have seen last summer and the plan that's before you this evening. Certainly, Mr. Seitz is probably the best positioned, or Mr. Miller, frankly, to talk about any of the changes between the previous plan and the current plan with you, to the extent that you still have questions about those. This is primarily a multifamily development. You'll see 4 multifamily buildings on the site, as well as numerous townhomes. We are here before the Planning Commission this evening to seek your recommendation of approval of the plan to the Board of Supervisors, as well as recommendation of approval of the 2 waiver requests that were part of our submission. We are in receipt of David Miller Associates review letter dated July 7th, 2022. And we are prepared to discuss that with you this evening. Before we jump into the review letter, do you have anything that you want to add about the development itself?
I just second what Claudia shared. The plan that you see tonight is really very similar. I mean, it's the same plan that we previewed for you in May, and it's quite different. It's different, of course, from the plan that we conditionally approved in October of last year. The main difference in this plan is the elimination of the underground parking. So previously, you had underground parking under buildings. And I'll just step over to the plan under these larger buildings, building 1 and 2, had underground parking. And these are each about 160 units, give or take. Building 4 was divided into 3 buildings, 2 of which had underground parking beneath them. So there were 2 smaller apartment buildings and then a community center in the middle that was a standalone building. The 2 smaller apartment buildings each had underground parking. So the main difference in this plan is the elimination of underground parking. That's due to cost factors and really the environment that we find ourselves in with the commodities prices, steel being the main driver of the cost of that underground parking. And we also felt, of course, otherwise we wouldn't have done it, that the elimination of that underground does not take away from the marketability and the attractiveness of this project. We feel very strongly about this. We were able to surface park in compliance with the township's ordinances. So I think those are really the main differences. We presented this in May. It's the same plan. The design that's been refined over these several months and has been submitted to the township and the conservation district is built around this design. So stormwater didn't really change much at all. It was refined to fit the contours of this plan. Again, those are really the main changes. So Claudia mentioned a gain of 13 units. That came from the consolidation of these 3 buildings into the 3 smaller buildings into this linear building. We gained 13 additional units. So the unit count for the total community is now 628. It was 615. So a modest gain of 13 units. And those, I think, are the main changes. Still the 28 townhomes across from Willow Road. I think the only other thing I'd add, and again, you saw it back in May, we really like the change in the amenity design for this project and locating the pool and the amenity space within the main courtyards of buildings 1 and 2. That design has been refined further, but including we've changed the pool orientation. This is really conceptual in this rendering, but we're going to have a really nice amenity space here that's going to build on the amenities that we talked about previously, where we've got some active recreation. We have the pool, we have grilling stations, seating, a really nice amenity area that's much more centrally tied into the 2 main buildings, the 2 main apartment communities. And we think it's just a better flow and actually provides more recreation space. Those are the highlights of the plan.
Amenities are just parks and things like that.
Yes, that rent units, yeah, that are tenants within the community.
So the plan is that the most current plan or is that an older? One we have in our packet is a little bit different.
That's the latest color right there.
Okay. 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 Yes, not a lot different, but slightly. There is still a community center in whatever that is, building 4. And that would be in the center, okay. That's, yeah, that's the plan we have, okay. Yeah.
With the standalone, that's essentially the same.
Okay. So we're looking at the same, yeah.
So maybe that's a good segue into Mr. Miller's presentation on the waiver requests. And there's also an item that we would like to discuss relative to parking reduction.
Thank you, Claudia. We have a DMA letter of July 7th. You should have that letter in front of you. A few things to talk through. And then if you have any questions, we can certainly address those items. On page 2 is the waivers, applications, and deferrals. The first item is regarding the sidewalks. This is actually a waiver that was approved before, and the comment is a carryover, just restating that meets and bounds need to be added to the easement. So nothing has changed. And now that the sidewalk, the walking paths are locked in location, we can certainly add those meets and bounds. So I'm not sure that any action is really required for that one. It's just a comment in my mind. The second one is regarding a request for mountable curb at the one driveway. I believe we had talked about this in May. We have a boulevard style entrance off of Greenfield Road at this point. And we've been coordinating with both fire companies. We're waiting for a letter of approval, but they're in favor of this plan in the layout. One thing they did ask for is for a mountable curb, just to add a little bit extra wiggle room as they bring the trucks in. So rather than a vertical curb at this point, we're requesting a modification for the mountable curb. And the DMA letter supports that. And we supplied a detail of that, but it needs to be added to the plans. So we'll certainly do that. So those are the one or the two waivers, depending on how you want to look at it before you this evening.
In your R2 letter, just for clarification, there was reference to a request for Willow where a deferral was granted, and there was language in the R2 June 14th letter asking for the new request for that. Has that been withdrawn, not requested?
No, the first comment, you're talking about the first comment under waivers?
No.
Oh, you're
This is
looking
the
at-
R2
At the R2
We
letter,
have language in here
and
that
number
says-
3, I didn't want to miss
I
that
think
if
it was
that's
worded this way originally, but
an issue.
what he's referring to is
Towards the bottom.
is now requesting a waiver. Was that in the original?
Related to the cartway with the Willow.
Yes. So,
I read both your letters, so I noticed. Yeah,
right, and there was some discussion back at the time about deferrals versus waivers. And we had, DMA had recommended a deferral, but in discussion with the board, it was decided that a waiver was more appropriate. And so that was what got approved.
well, the board approval, my understanding was a deferral.
They,
Says a waiver.
Well,
they deferred the widening, waived the curve, I believe. I don't have that letter in front of me.
I'm jumping around, but in the Dave Miller letter, then it's, I guess it's a clarification if needed here. In the Dave Miller letter on page 4 under item 6, it has Supervisor Blowers made a motion to conditionally approve 2021-17. I'm not going to read all that, but it's, with a waiver of road widening along Willow Road, deferral curbing along Willow, and a deferral agreement. So
Right.
there was a waiver Okay, and for the road widening, and then a deferral for the curbing another. Okay,
If I said that backwards, I apologize. I'm trying to get back in my mind, but that's right. And so the deferral agreement will be prepared prior to. And we're not asking for any change to that with this.
okay. Yeah, what confused me here, I said it was a new request. And 14th letter,
It was worded that way in the original request.
Yeah.
Instead of a deferral, they received a waiver.
a waiver, yeah, okay. Thank you.
Go further.
Yes, if you will.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
And in general, these technical comments, we have no issue with addressing. I think they're relatively minor. Number one is just adding the outcome of these requests to the plan once they are finally determined. Under zoning is, as Claudia mentioned, we previously received a reduction in parking for the community center. That was with the original plan. Again, there's no change to that. And it was actually suggested by the supervisors when we presented to them in May, I believe it was, they asked if we were going to request additional parking reduction. And it was just a question on their behalf. And so we added that as a discussion item, that the zoning ordinance allows a 20% reduction in parking. This plan shows the full requirement per the ordinance, which is 1.5 spaces per apartment plus visitor parking plus 1 space per employee, 921 spaces in all. And that's what this plan represents. What we are suggesting, what we'd like to discuss with you is a reduction of 59 spaces, which amounts to a 6.4% reduction. So nowhere close to 20%. But what we're looking at is the 59 spaces that are along this drive aisle servicing the townhomes. And it seemed to make sense if we were going to reduce parking that it was not needed. This would be the most likely place to do that. It's a little more remote from the buildings and seemed like a logical place to reduce that. And so the intent would be that those would not be installed. However, all the stormwater management, everything else has been designed for this full build out, and we won't change that. So we'll actually have a little bit additional stormwater management. These 59 spaces are not constructed. These do not service the town. The 28 townhomes have meet the parking requirements in their driveway. So additional parking to meet that requirement.
So could you just say one more time, description of the spaces you have? You have 1 space for every apartment. 1.5 for every apartment.
1.5 per apartment.
Okay.
And then 1 for every 40 apartments for visitor parking. And then we anticipate 6 employees. So that's how we arrived at the 921.
And the ratio is about 1:5 if you back in. We think that's in line with what we see, but there's good authority out there, and we see lower ratios in 1:4 range, which we think is entirely appropriate as well. There's a lot of parking there. Those remote, it is a large community, but there is a lot of parking. Those remote spaces feel are not going to detract at all from the tenants and the business. So that was a logical place. There are other places on that plan that we look based on the comments that we got before. the parking below building 4, where you see the paint wall, that's a much trickier proposition. They are also, got plenty of parking around that building. That parking will be less than between building 4 and building 1 and 2. We feel that could be eliminated as well, but it has under the potential bed. That's really good for the stormwater design. I think the cost savings there is painful. That projection is very, very, there are other issues. I think the 59 days are a logical place to start. Another place would be the
town, do they actually come in the backside or they come off the chair?
They come off of Greenfield at this point and the access drive. There's a separate connection. But yeah, there are no proposed connections off of Willow Road.
I'm not totally familiar with this one. I haven't started with it.
4 buildings, the units that are in there, are they 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom? Okay. And not sure how to say this, but this is not low income housing. Right. So my gut feeling is people that will be renting, it would not be unlikely that they would have 2 or 3 vehicles. You know, even if it's just a 1 bedroom with a working couple, generally they each have a car. So the 1.5 per unit, I'm thinking out loud, if you will, you know, and whether there would be sufficient parking, for the people renting here would have the wherewithal to have a car each, not for the, you know, but I don't know if that logic makes sense. Or, and there's no other place to park. There's no street parking. They're not going to go park at Thaddeus Stevens or the next building that's closest to it. They're going to have to park here. I don't know what your provision is if individuals have a trailer. Or if they, yeah.
Got it working with this that not pay some of those bills that they feel those right. I think we're biased for one.
Well, and you said there's 2 and 3 bedroom units. So, yeah. Yeah. And on this is a zoning issue, I mean, which we're talking about, but just if the reduction is permitted, you said it, the plan is designed such that for stormwater and all is accounted for with runoff, et cetera. Will this, if they're not built, the what, 59 now, would it be such that they could be paid later? They could be added if the need so arises?
Yeah, the plan is just not to build those. In the future, that area would be available to put those in.
Yeah, because there is the provision for the 20% reduction, but you know, that probably all should be a provision that you could add parking if the demand is there or the need, which, and ICE is very good at filling the units they build. We tend not to have vacancies or very minimal. So I'm seeing it built out and filled and is concerned that there's sufficient parking. Yeah. I don't want to pave any more than we have to. No, the preference is pervious service, but yeah. But if the need is there, where are they going to go? Yeah. closest would be across the street at the nursing.
What are the client groups that you're focusing on? I know the reserve was a really particular focus. What is the focus for this development?
We've got more just the scale. The ratio.
So you're saying there are more one-bedroom apartments in this?
Yeah, I don't recall the exact figure.
How do you see the impact on traffic? And forgive me, I'm just got on the board too, so I'm trying to catch up as well. But how do you see the impact on traffic in this area? I know there's some discussions about looping into Route 30 and, that's probably coming down the road, but how do you see the impact on this immediate area?
Say we had groundbreaking this last week, Thursday, groundbreaking on Walnut Street Drive. That's definitely the center and everything back in the street. So when we first brought this project to you, it was like the schedule split for the multi-family come first. We had a lot of discussion about how traffic would be served. We didn't have Walnut Street, but you could Greenfield, issues on Greenfield. Now we can say Walnut, California, that schedule, that project. But we had a letter from TPD, if my memory serves me correctly, that the impact of this development be accommodated by road improvement, and then with Walnut Street coming along, no doubt that the
There were some comments from the county planning commission regarding walkways.
That was from the original submission, and we addressed those comments to the satisfaction of the board. And
Is it this? Oh, it is 2020.
We-
Last
yeah,
year,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
right,
I assumed it was 2022.
we were directed
Okay.
that a resubmission to the county was not needed.
Okay, thank you. My bad. So the only two issues are the two modification requests for us.
Yes, well, and there were 8 subdivision land development comments.
But
All right. And then you had the one, the 20 stormwater management comments. You can, and my take, there was no waivers in that area for us to look at, so you'd have to satisfy
They're
our engineer.
they're very technical, very minor.
Yeah,
Clean up.
yeah, it's a lot of,
we did get a review from the conservation.
We did. They had 2 minor comments on erosion control, and they're ready to issue a permit. As soon as we get a revised plan addressing everyone's comments back in.
yeah, and I believe you've done a resubmission to the fire companies. So they had some issues about access to the center courtyards.
Right, and I don't know if we mentioned that, but we discussed about the elimination of the boulevard between buildings 1 and 2, and they were happy with that.
Claudia gave us, while you were speaking, courtyard concept plan, which I presume is one for buildings 1 and 2. That, my bringing that up, thank you for that. You have a note on the plan that courtyard layouts to be determined by owner. The stormwater management design assumes 75% impervious. So you're looking at not defining the layout now, but it would be done later. I guess that would be part of as-built plans that then would be recorded to delineate specifically what is there, and may be important. I don't know. I see it here. I didn't look at it. Hopefully the fire company has this so that they know that they have adequate access with the equipment they have to get to the buildings in the event that they ever need to show up.
We spent a lot of time reviewing this.
So yeah, depending on what you end up doing, I think you need to be in constant dialogue if that's approved to not have a plan now, but evolve as you move forward with each of the buildings. That you should continue dialogue with the emergency services to make sure that it is accessible in an emergency so that lives are saved if needed.
Yeah, I made a statement in just describing the changes to the plan that we really like this in the possibilities it offered for the amenity space design. This design you see is pretty far along. We spent a lot of time on it, and actually brought in a really noted pool architect to help us with the orientation of that pool, make sure it maximizes sunlight at the right times, and just design that amenity space to make it a really enjoyable place for the tenants. That has been shared with the fire companies. They made a lot of comment on the path network, which is going to be able to accommodate their vehicles. Certainly from the east to west, that kind of straight line path that's been widened to accommodate their vehicle if need be. I think they said one axle has to hit it. But
They want 10 foot wide.
they want 10 foot wide, yeah.
Access.
To your point, we'll revisit with them, but what you see in front of you is, I just wanted to share it with you so you get a sense of our
Thank you.
vision. And we'll certainly be sitting down with them again.
Yeah, I think the one comment, I think it was regards to building 3 of the access that was there may not be adequate. And I think you modified that from original, but then there was a comment, there was a tree placed in there that thornless honey locust.
Yeah,
And-
there were 2 trees.
Yeah,
We feel that there is space there, but we moved the trees.
yeah.
It's not a big issue.
Yeah. What I just noticed on this one, this is tree line, and I didn't look at the scale. And now you said 10 feet they need to get the vehicle in, but yeah. So this straight line path is tree lined also, whether that's, yeah, just
Right.
the details.
The branches would have to be maintained
Yeah.
to allow the vehicle through. Yes.
Well, the buildings are 3, 4 story, 5 story. They're going to bring their big ladder truck in if they need to, yeah. Which will need a little more maneuver. Yeah. Any other comments or concerns? just zoning is not a relief from this side. We had a discussion on zoning, it's up to our zoning officer. That dialogue, I'm sure, is going to continue on the details there and staff and what's allowed. But yeah, my comment, I guess, was you have designed it stormwater wise, et cetera, to accommodate that paving. But just to make sure that in the future, if you do need it, it wouldn't be an issue to add it, if the need arises. Okay. No further discussion. I'll look for a motion.
Since you were both relatively new, make the motion. I'll recommend to the Board of Supervisors the approval of final land development plan 2021-17 for Greenfield North. And I'm going to mention, since it's in David Miller's letter, I'm still going to mention granting with the condition that a fully described pedestrian easement would be provided over the entire walking path as already identified by the Township Board of Supervisors, and to grant to allow the installation of a mountable concrete curb at the boulevard entrance on the Greenfield Road to meet local fire department requests. We will agree to address the other comments in the David Miller letter dated July 7th, 2022 regarding general notes, subdivision land development, stormwater management, deferring the zoning to the zoning hearing officer.
So we have the motion. Do I have a second? Have a second. Any discussion? I just had note that we did have comments from the county on the previous review, and a second review was noted not necessary. So the July 16, 2021 comments indicated they were complied with. So with that, all those in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, none, abstaining, none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Following the agenda, briefing items are none this evening. Under other business, we have Upper Leacock Township zoning map change. We have a packet of information with zoning review from staff.
Yeah, it's a very brief review. 61 Hess Road up in Leola. They are changing the zoning from agricultural to light industrial. It's a total acreage of 9 acres. The existing land use is ag with some manufacturing already. And they are proposing to continue some of the ag and increase some of the manufacturing on the site. So it's very brief, but it's a minor change. It does. I believe in the past, part of the property had the opportunity and it wasn't. Now they're just coming back to it now, but it's a different owner. So this change is consistent with the Conestoga Valley Regional Strategic Comp Plan, and it also it actually makes it continuous with the surrounding properties that are adjacent to it. So
It sounds like it's surrounded by non-agricultural lands. Is the only piece. And the comments that I saw here, yeah, Jason said previous owner changed their mind. I guess and they're in agreement. So. Okay. I don't do.
I don't believe
We
there's
don't think
any,
we do a motion. on
no,
this. We
just any comments.
Yeah. Any comments from planning commission members? I just believe that from the planning commission, appears that the requested zoning change is appropriate and acceptable from our perspective at the planning commission, and don't see any reason not to proceed, especially since it is consistent with the Conestoga Valley Region Strategic Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you.
Announcements, none. Since this was typed, I don't know if there was a new agenda, our new agenda out. Date did change to the 19th.
Check that in minutes.
So. So with that, look for a motion to adjourn. Gentlemen,
So moved.
we have a motion from Jerry. Do we have a second? From Jason, thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
So used to Randy doing it.
I'm trying to write down what you say, so